We're kicking off with NXT, and with the holidays coming up, WWE decided to tape next week's episode in advance, meaning the roster and crew will have more time to spend with friends and family. At the taping, NXT champion Ilja Dragunov faced Holland, and in photos that appeared after the taping, it looked like something seriously had gone wrong. Dragunov was seen being attended to by medical staff and was placed on a stretcher and a neck brace, with fans concerned that the NXT champion is dealing with a serious injury. Thankfully, that no longer appears to be the case, as in an update, it was said by sources who spoke to Sean Ross Sapp that this is just a storyline and not a legitimate injury. It seems the WWE are leaning into the notion that Holland is dangerous in the ring, and this storyline will likely give nods to the situation which happened with Big E in March of last year. It should be pointed out that Big E holds no ill will towards Ridge, who received death threats from fans at the time, and what do you make of this new angle? Let us know in the comments below. Over to Dynamite as Jon Moxley faced Swerve Strickland in the main event of the show, in perhaps the most anticipated Continental Classic match so far. Both Mox and Swerve entered the match with 3 consecutive wins each, and throughout the match, the crowd were behind Strickland and made it clear that this was Swerve's house. This was a hard-hitting encounter with some brutal spots and some unpredictability, as fans were left wondering who would take home the 3 points and who would suffer their first loss. There were some mind games being played throughout the match, and in one of the more surprising moments, Moxley planted a kiss on the cheek of Strickland, who returned the favor shortly after. In the end, it was Moxley who got the win, giving him 12 points and keeping his undefeated streak in the Continental Classic, and set up a must-win scenario for Strickland next week. The finish also created sympathy for Swerve, who fought through a bad shoulder, had Moxley reeling, and lost via screwy means, as Moxley had to cheat to pick up the win. It also drums up controversy and gives a reason for the two to run it back again in the semifinals if that is the direction Tony Khan plans on taking things. The match was not as good as White vs. Briscoe or El Idolo vs. King, but it was a nice appetizer for what the two competitors can do without the strict TV time limits. This week's Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite saw a red-hot appearance by the Devil, and the Masked Person and their assailants attacked a former AEW World Champion to end the show. That former champion is Hangman Adam Page, who just last week was accused by MJF of being the man behind the mask. After that confrontation, MJF was allegedly attacked by some masked thugs with a beer bottle, and the Devil appeared on screen, but as many have pointed out, we never saw MJF be attacked. Following the events of last week, Samoa Joe opened Dynamite and accused Page of being the Devil, which left the Cowboy infuriated and would take his frustrations out on Roderick Strong. A good competitive physical match concluded with Page overcoming interference from Matt Taven and Mike Bennett and flattening Strong with the Deadeye for the victory. Following the main event of Jon Moxley defeating Swerve Strickland, Hangman Page was ambushed by a group of masked men in the parking area, and the Devil was seen coming out of a car. The group smashed Page onto the windshield of the car, and did this attack subtly reveal who the masked leader of this group is? After all, if you're thinking of AEW talent and windshields, ones made out of real glass, no less, then your mind goes to Jack Perry, who many have accused of being the Devil. Perry's suspension from AEW programming reportedly ended over a month ago, and since then, the company has been waiting for the right storyline to reintroduce him to fans. It's evident that Hangman Page is not the Devil, but now the intrigue has risen even more. And do you think it could be anybody other than the former Jungle Boy? Since his return to WWE, CM Punk has been one of the most prominently featured superstars and has appeared on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT before exclusively signing with the Red brand. Last weekend, Punk was at the NXT Deadline event and was also backstage during this week's show, and this may be a sign of what's next for Punk after his in-ring career. According to wrestle purists, this active interest in NXT from Punk might be because of his long-term motivation to succeed Michaels as the head of NXT, and Fightful Select has added, Ibu of Wrestle Purists has a good connection with sources close to Punk and says that Punk's long-term goal is to succeed the 58-year-old Michaels in heading up NXT. WWE officials tell Fightful that something like that would be a long way off, and there are no plans as of now for Michaels to wrap up his run in NXT anytime soon. Ibu also noted that Punk would be observing TV production, something that he was known to do in OVW, and would often bend Paul Heyman's ear about it. The report further says that Punk was extremely pleasant to everyone at the WWE Performance Center, offering to help anyone with whatever he could, which won't go unnoticed. WWE's Backstage team have been on board with Punk's return, but Shawn Michaels has been the most vocal about it, and was the one who invited Punk to Deadline last week. Given his reputation in AEW, we're sure some are cautious to give Punk the reins to NXT, but with his decades in the ring, CM Punk will have a lot that he can share with the next generation of superstars. We mentioned that CM Punk was backstage at this week's edition of NXT, and while he didn't appear on screen, he was in no hurry to leave Orlando. PW Insider reports that Punk attended the WWE Performance Center yesterday and was seen training with talent and holding court as well. It was also noted that there was a massive genuine excitement when Punk surprised everyone by showing up and spending the day with talents, and once again, he was pleasant to be around. CM Punk may have signed with Raw, but he's very interested in the talent of NXT right now, and once again, all reports of Punk's WWE return have been wholly positive. In more Continental Classic action, Jay White fought with all he had, knowing it'd be difficult for him to remain in contention if he lost to the mathematically eliminated Mark Briscoe. Fortunately for White, he was able to thwart a late-minute surge by the Ring of Honor veteran and hit the Blade Runner on Briscoe to earn 3 very much needed points. This was a good match, but one that would have meant more if the respected Briscoe was still meaningfully involved in the tournament. A week after his loss to Jon Moxley, Rush channeled his frustrations this week, earning an impressive win over Jay Lethal in the Continental Classic. Rush dominated the action and put Lethal down with the very bulldog choke that caused him to lose consciousness long enough for the referee to declare Moxley the winner last Wednesday. This win made Rush seem like a legitimate threat to win the entire tournament, and also further intensified Lethal's own frustrations with his defeat. Post-match, it was teased that Jay's time with the faction that includes Jeff Jarrett, Sanjay Dutt, and Satnam Singh may be ending, and what would be a major change for the former ROH World Champion. Following her return to AEW last week, Riho has made it clear she plans to challenge Women's Champion Toni Storm, because rushing the ring to make the save is how new #1 contenders are determined in this division. This week, Riho at least scored a quality win over Ruby Soho in a solid, if unspectacular, match that was hurt mightily, like so many women's matches in the past, by a commercial break. Once again, Toni Storm stole the show as she was on commentary, and her Tasmaniac reference earned her bonus points, with Taz saying the Timeless One was going old school. Storm also had words about Riho, and after the Japanese star suplexed Soho, the champ said that there's absolutely no way she would be able to do that to me, I'm far too big. It's interesting to see Soho essentially play the role of enhancement for Riho, and her and Saraya's position in the women's division is almost unfathomable given how central they were not too long ago. After the match, Storm mockingly applauded Riho from ringside as it became clearer that they are on a collision course for a championship match, presumably on December 30th at World's End. In less than a month, Impact Wrestling will relaunch as TNA Wrestling, and there's been a lot of big moves made by the promotion already. Fans are excited to see what's to come from the new TNA Wrestling, and fans will have another reason to get excited after this week's episode of Impact on Axis TV. PW Insider reports that this week's show will be themed around hidden gem matches and will feature an announcement of the return of an international star. This international star will be part of the TNA Hard to Kill event on January 13th, and we know that this show will feature Kazuchika Okada in his first TNA match in 12 years. As for who this other international star is, we'll find out soon enough, but Impact Wrestling is making a lot of big moves ahead of the relaunch next month. More from Impact as the company is growing its roster ahead of the big change next month, and now, former New Japan and WWE star Kushida is under contract. It was confirmed this week that Kushida has signed a TNA contract, meaning he'll be around plenty when the relaunch happens next month, and this won't be his first time with the company. At this year's Rebellion event, Kushida fought for the vacant Impact World title against Steve Maclin but was unsuccessful, but now Kushida will be on the hunt for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. The last time fans saw Savannah Evans compete in an Impact Wrestling ring, it was back in September, but she's continued to make appearances on the indies. Her most recent match, however, was last month, and we have now learned that she has undergone a knee surgery, which was carried out earlier this month. According to PW Insider, the reason behind this surgical intervention was the presence of troublesome bone spurs in her knee, which required prompt medical attention. The good news for fans of Savannah Evans is that the expectation is she will have ample time to recover and complete her rehabilitation before making her return to the squared circle. The target date for her comeback is set to coincide with the TNA Hard to Kill pay-per-view event scheduled for next month in Las Vegas, and we're wishing her the best on her recovery. It was at Wrestle Dream that Adam Copeland made his AEW debut, becoming the latest WWE star and Hall of Famer to become All Elite. Copeland joins the likes of Sting, Ric Flair, and Arn Anderson to be WWE Hall of Famers to join AEW, but now another inductee, and one very close to Copeland, could be next. During the Fightful Select Q&A, Sean Ross Sapp was asked about Beth Phoenix potentially joining her husband in AEW and said that her name has been brought up by people backstage. With that said, Sapp said he's not sure if the Glamazon in AEW is a possibility, and when asked if her absence from WWE TV means anything, said he doesn't believe there is a connection. Instead, Sapp suggested that when WWE has a storyline or broadcast assignment for her, Beth will be back on TV, but would you rather see her in AEW? Let us know down in the comments. Speaking of returns to the ring, fans are eager to see AJ Lee return to WWE now that CM Punk is back, and Punk even gave a shout out to his wife during his first promo back on Raw. During his Q&A, Sapp said that Lee's return isn't off the table, as she enjoyed her return to the business as part of WOW Women of Wrestling. There's a ton of women in WWE who would love to wrestle AJ Lee, with many being inspired by Lee, so don't rule out a return from the former Divas champion. Back to Dynamite, and Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega returned Wednesday and cut a promo on AEW World Tag Team Champions Ricky Starks and Big Bill, with Jericho blaming the champs for dislocating his elbow at Full Gear. The champs interrupted, and after some verbal back and forth, a match was made for World's End in a segment that was frankly not good at all. The two babyfaces tried to be clever and failed miserably to keep up with Starks on the mic, and when that didn't work, they dipped into Enzo Amore-themed insults to get to Big Bill. Whatever you may think about the Certified G, the crux of the insults was that Bill was part of one of the most naturally over tag teams in NXT history, and perhaps the Golden Jets should check what an insult is. The fact that everyone talked over everyone else only exacerbated a promo that saw problems from the start in a segment featuring 4 notable names that didn't go well. In another Continental Classic showdown, Andrade El Idolo defeated Brody King to earn 3 crucial points in the Blue League in what was a battle between 2 driven competitors. Both men dealt hard blows about the body of the other, testing their toughness and endurance, and ultimately, it was Andrade's cunning that proved the difference maker. Andrade exposed a turnbuckle and drove King's face into it before delivering a hammerlock DDT for the win, continuing El Idolo's string of success, which saw him beat Bryan Danielson on Collision. This was one of the better matches of this tournament, and while Andrade's name hasn't been discussed all that much as a favorite to win, he could definitely reach the top of the Blue League. It's no secret that Andrade El Idolo's contract with AEW is set to expire in 2024, and there's been a lot of talk about the possibility of him leaving. Andrade has teased being frustrated with AEW in the past, and reportedly tried to get himself fired with a backstage fight last year, but he may be staying in AEW longer than he expected. During a Fightful Select Q&A, Sean Ross Sapp was asked about Andrade and said that due to an injury, he may have time added to the end of his current deal. AEW has added time to talents' contracts in the past if they miss a lot of dates due to injury, and Andrade certainly missed a lot of time in AEW before returning to TV for Collision. It'll be interesting to see how Tony Khan handles this situation, and we'll just have to see what company Andrade is a part of in 12 months' time. One name fans haven't seen in the ring in some time is Pac, and there's a reason why the former WWE superstar hasn't been on AEW programming in some time. During that Fightful Q&A, Sapp was asked about the inaugural AEW All-Atlantic champion and shared that he remains medically sidelined. Tony Khan has said that he hopes to have Pac back before All In 2024 in London, and while that is still months away, there's still no sign of Pac being back anytime soon. In AEW, Bryan Danielson is considered one of the most respected names on the roster, but recently, the American Dragon was given a role of authority to handle other wrestlers. Danielson has been tasked with finding talent who break AEW's rules on social media, with Mike Santana reportedly being one of the names fined by the ex-superstar. During his Fightful Select Q&A, Sean Ross Sapp was asked about potential backlash against Danielson for finding talent, and his response was a resounding no. He explained, Absolutely none internally. There are some who hadn't heard of the policy or the fining stuff being implemented, who hadn't been on TV recently, so they were like, hey, what's going on with this? I hadn't heard of that. Twitter overreacts to everything. Twitter, Facebook, and social media. They overreact to everything. They love to pretend that they're mad about everything. Nobody's mad about this internally at all. AEW certainly has their own way of handling things, and it appears that Bryan Danielson is handing down those fines, but contrary to what some have said, the roster aren't outraged by this. But what do you think of this practice? Should Danielson be the one in charge of finding talent, or should somebody not on the roster take that role? Let us know in the comments. Since coming to WWE, Logan Paul has proven he's willing to put his body on the line in the name of entertainment, and this week, the US champion had quite the unusual table spot. During a promotional event for their Prime Energy drink, Paul was put through a table by KSI, who used an attitude adjustment on his fellow YouTuber and business partner. Paul was then pinned by Prime's newest signing, Sammy Rivera, a popular Twitch streamer, and while the US title didn't change hands, this certainly made for an entertaining spot at the event. Last month, Hulk Hogan's son Nick was arrested and charged with a DUI after being seen partying at his father's beachside resort in Florida. There's been an update in the case now, as according to court records, Nick will be arraigned for his misdemeanor DUI charge on Monday, and an update is expected at that time. Nick was pulled over and arrested for failing a field sobriety test, and this isn't the first time he has had a run-in with the law due to his driving. In 2007, mere weeks after his fourth speeding ticket in less than a year, Nick was involved in a serious crash, and his friend, former US Marine John Graziano, suffered major brain damage in the crash. Nick Hogan never made a name for himself in wrestling, but he has shown a destructive lifestyle that is unfortunately seen by many stars, and we'll follow this case for further updates. Last month, Alexa Bliss and her husband Ryan Cabrera became parents to a healthy baby girl called Hendrix Rogue Cabrera, and recently, the goddess of WWE made a public appearance. In her first public appearance in some time, Bliss and Cabrera attended a basketball game in the couple's first public outing since welcoming Hendrix into the world. It's been close to a year since Bliss's last match at the 2023 Royal Rumble, and she hopes to be back in the ring soon. And we're wishing the new mama and Cabrera all the best at this time. Later this month, A24 will release their Von Erich biopic, The Iron Claw, but now the much-acclaimed production studio is set to take on the world of MMA. The Hollywood Reporter notes that Dwayne Johnson will star in The Smashing Machine, which will see the Brahma Bull play a two-time UFC heavyweight tournament champion, Mark Kerr. Kerr earned his moniker The Smashing Machine thanks to his ferocious fighting style, and his career and battle with addiction will make for a compelling watch when the film is released.